Hey guys, so today is the start of an impromptu reading vlog because I just got a notice that today I'm going to be receiving an ARC and I'm very surprised by it. So Kerrigan is an indie author that I love to read. She has some very unique storylines. Some of my favorite books by her are Talon, Torn, and Tied. I find it all funny that my favorite books all start with T. But her new romance is a standalone. It's called Don't Kiss the Bride. It's going to be an age gap romance and also a marriage of convenience. So I'm really excited about it. And I just got word today that the ARCs are going out, which I'm very surprised about because like 2 days ago she sent out her beta reads. So not exactly sure what the beta readers are doing if she's not making corrections before the ARC's going out, but I'm not complaining because I want this book like really badly. So it's Monday and I just got a notice that ARCs are starting to be sent out, so my Kindle's just like on and like waiting to be downloaded. So I decided that I was going to get a head start on my February ARCs and also some from March as well because I just want to stay on top of my ARCs. I don't request a lot of them because sometimes I feel like an obligation and I try to only request the ones that I really love, or only accept the ones that are sent to me that I really am interested in reading and not just like everything. So anyway, I will let you guys know when I get Don't Kiss the Bride, and I can't wait to start talking about this book because I hope it's gonna be amazing. I hope it has a lot of Torn vibes because Torn is one of my favorite books by Kerrigan. That's an age gap romance, that's a taboo romance. I was just like all up in its business. It's one of my favorite romances. I just love it. She gives me all the feels. So I'm hoping I'm gonna love it just as much as that one. But I'm trying to temper my expectations. It's hard, guys. I am a reader who's very passionate about the books that I'm anticipating. And sometimes that's to my detriment because then I have expectations and sometimes they don't meet my expectations. So I'm trying not to, but it's hard not to get excited. It's like this is a battle with myself. But anyway, I have a lot of other ARCs that I want to read for this vlog. I think it's 5 books. Let me consult. So, okay, so Don't Kiss the Bride. Then I'm going to read Love at First by Kate Claiborne, which I'm very pumped to read Love at First because tomorrow we have our live Patreon review for Love Lettering. So I just reread Love Lettering and I forgot how much I really enjoyed that book. So I'm excited for that one. So Love at First is going to be my next ARC. Well, I don't know what order I'm going to read in. I'm going to just read whatever order I want. The Heiress Hunt by Joanna Shoop, Actor A.G. Brown, and The Devil in Her Bed by Kerrigan Byrne. So that's going to be this whole vlog. I don't know how long it's going to take me. So if I have Don't Kiss the Bride and I read that today, because I'm assuming I'm going to binge it, hopefully. So I'm hoping by the end of this weekend, like Sunday, I'll be able to finish this vlog. It's high hopes, but I've been doing pretty good in January. I've been reading a lot, but no promises. I don't know when this vlog's gonna come out. We'll just see. I'm really pumped about it, and yeah, I'm excited. So the ARC of Don't Kiss the Bride has just dropped on my Kindle, and yeah, I just want to show you all the pretty cover. I have like a paperwhite, so you can't really see the cover, but I really like it. I mean, I could add this post in editing, but yeah, I just love this cover. So I did start reading this already, and like I said, Kerrigan has some really unique characters. The heroine is definitely someone that I'm very interested in because you already can tell there's some sort of secret that she's keeping about her living conditions. So to start off, the heroine is a high school student, a senior in high school, and the hero is a construction worker, and he's working on an addition to a house like right across the parking lot from the school, and he sees the heroine drive up in her like, I think it was a Corvette. I'm not well versed in cars. I know that Kerrigan really likes them, but I think it was a 75 Corvette. I have no idea what those look like, but cute. Anyway, she seems to have a very vintage vibe. She was blaring old music, and he was like, wow, interesting. This kid is driving a Corvette, listening to music that's like way before she was born. So, of course, he's fascinated. And this is Jude Luchetti, but his nickname is Lucky, and he's like very tattooed, long hair. It's very much Kerrigan vibes. That's like all her heroes are like that, and I especially love tattooed men, so yes. So her car breaks down. He offers to help. I really like the conversation because she's very interesting. Like, okay, yeah, weird tattoo dude coming up to me offering me help. So I really like how she's like skeptical. She's not very trusting, but she does end up by allowing Jude to help her. You can see that she's very money conscious, that she doesn't have a lot of cash because she's like, how much is this going to cost? I can't even afford a tow. And so we're just starting to get a glimpse that she's living a hard life. And so she's also dropped off at her house. And when Jude's dropping her off at her house, you can tell like she's stalling. She's waiting for him to leave. And he's like observing the house. All the windows are closed like tight with curtains. You can't see inside. The front porch has like, you know, cobwebs on it. And so it's like, I don't know. And then we find out like she goes around the back after he leaves and she goes in through a window into her bedroom. And she has a cat. I forgot what the cat's called. It's like not Snuffleupagus. Like, you know, from Sesame Street. What's it called? Okay, so she named her cat Fluffaleupagus. I'm just going to call it Fluff for short. And so she's living in some very dire circumstances. And this all happens within the first chapter, and this is pretty much her background, and we find out exactly how dire her circumstances are. But if you don't want to hear about that, I mean, it happens like in the first chapter. But her mom is a hoarder, and it's gotten so bad, and she's not told anybody, that her entire house is filled with junk. And like, so she's in her bedroom. She has to get into her bedroom from her window, and she has like 3 deadbolts on the door so that her mom can't use her room to store her piles and piles of stuff. And she unlocks the deadbolts to the door, and she opens it up, and she's like hit with a wave of like disgusting decay, musty smells. And I'm just like, ugh, my heart is already breaking for her. Kerrigan writes some very interesting storylines. I've never read a character that had a parent be a hoarder or know anybody who was a hoarder. So very interesting. I can't watch those types of reality shows. I can't, my stomach can't handle that type of stuff. So reading about it is a little, I'm glad that it wasn't too much description, because no, I can't imagine. So I'm assuming that Jude is going to eventually find out what her circumstances are, and she hasn't even told her best friend. So one thing I find interesting is that the fact that she's in high school. So I'm just interested in how that all plays out. She is 18. And my favorite age gap romance that Kerrigan has written, the heroine is 17, but she graduates and then she turns 18. That's kind of how I was. I graduated at 17, actually started college at 17. So Kenzie, her romance pretty much starts after she's graduated high school. So she's no longer in high school anymore. But this heroine's still in high school. So that's an interesting dynamic. We'll see how that plays out. All right, I'll update you guys later. I'll try not to like binge too much and not update you guys, but I don't know. I can never tell what kind of vlog I'm going to be doing, if I'm going to like binge it and then have to recap the whole thing, or if I'm going to come in with constant updates. It's a coin toss with me. I'll let you guys know. So some reading updates. It's currently Wednesday. I did not vlog yesterday. So I finished Don't Kiss the Bride by Kerrigan, and I'm kind of struggling to rate this because it just didn't really work for me. The way I wanted it to, it just didn't hit those notes that the books that I really love by Kerrigan hit with me. I did not view these characters as like, I don't know. I think about Talon and Torn and Tide. Those couples, they were like epic couples, and I really felt like a soulmate connection between them. But for this one, I feel like there was so much going on in the book that some things I feel like were a little underexplored, and I feel like I like them as people. I like them as characters. I liked Jude and I liked Skylar as people, and I just had a hard time accepting that these two were in love with each other by the end of the book. I just didn't feel like enough happened within their relationship. A lot of things happen in the book, but relationship-wise, it just didn't develop enough for me to accept them as like a happily ever after couple. Okay, so a few things. Skylar, like I mentioned before, she's in high school, and she has a lot going on. Skylar's the one that has a lot going on. So not only is her mom a hoarder, but she suffers from, oh my goodness, what is it called? Okay, so she has some mental health issues, and it's called ARFID, Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. And this developed because when she was little, she consumed some food in the fridge because her mom was a hoarder and she didn't clean out any of her stuff, so she was feeding herself, and she ate some spoiled food and it made her sick. So now she has this like averse reaction to foods that she are not like simple, that she can't see prepared. Like she needs it to be simple. She usually eats like bread and butter and something that like can't be tampered with, and something that's like fresh and sealed, and she likes like even her drinks to be completely sealed. So she's dealing with that. And one of the reasons why Jude offers to marry Skylar is because she collapses in the school parking lot, and Jude gets to witness this, and he brings her to the ER. And so she spills all what's going on with her, what her mom's doing, and he is like, I can't just stand by. There's nobody to help her. Her dad pieced out when she was younger and didn't even think to take her. And her mom just like doesn't even check on her, is a completely negligent parent. So I will just offer up to be like this safe space for her. And I have this huge house because he lives in the house that his parents had built. And so he's like, she can be on my insurance and she can go see her therapist because she has prescriptions for medicines that she needs to take, but she can't even afford to fill them. And so he was like, I'm gonna help you get on your feet. Let's get married. It'll just be a marriage of convenience. You'll have your own room. Like, we have plenty of space. It'll be fine. But the problem is she's still in high school and she is severely bullied. She really doesn't have any friends. She has that one friend, I forgot what her name is, but Skylar feels very young. The other age gap romance that Carrie and Cole wrote, I felt like Kenzie was very mature for her age. It made sense for Kenzie and Tor to be together because they wanted the same things. You could just tell they were so totally in sync together, and they had history. These are two complete strangers, and they have so much things going on. One of Jude's conflicts is that his sister, who he was close with, disappeared whenever she was 16 and is considered kind of like a runaway. And it's been 10 years and nobody's heard or seen of her. He doesn't know if she's dead or not. And so Jude is just like this caregiver. He likes to help people. He's just a really nice guy. So Skylar kind of isolated herself because she didn't want anybody to feel pity for her. And she only has one real friend. And that friend who she talks to, who she's in contact with, she's nice, but that friend seems very immature. And I'll give you a little example because it's like, so this is Skylar's only friend. This is who she hangs out with. And so her kind of like very young teenagery attitude that she's displaying makes me think of Skylar as young as well. And Skylar does act young herself. But this is one of the things about her friends that really annoyed me. So her friend starts dating this guy because all of a sudden this guy who used to be nerdy, he got hot. He started working out. And so Skylar's friend was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like teach him how to dress. I like told him how to like do his hair and stuff like that. And then at one point in the novel, when Skylar was talking about Jude's tattoos, her friend was like, oh my God, who knew tattoos are so sexy? I'm gonna talk my boyfriend into getting tattoos. And like all of that really kind of bothers me. The fact that her friend is dating this guy he's really nice, but she's trying to change him and mold him into somebody that she wants to be with. And I'm like, that's wrong to like basically curate your own boyfriend and be like, this is how I want you to look, this is how I want you to dress, and let's slap some permanent tattoos on you. Like, I'm a person, I love tattoos, I have tattoos, I don't have anything against tattoos. But if I fall in love with somebody who doesn't want to have tattoos, I'm not gonna like convince them to get tattoos. That's just wrong. So anyway, that's Skylar's friend. And when they talk on the phone, it seems very much like just like teenagery, you know, like, ooh, we're talking about like boys who we think are cute. But this is supposed to be a romance between an 18-year-old and a 34-year-old. And I'm just like, she just doesn't seem mature enough for Jude. Even though she's gone through some shit in her life, that doesn't automatically make her mature enough to handle this relationship with Jude. And that really reflects in their sexual relationship. So this is kind of like spoiler territory, more spoiler territory than I've already been talking about, but they have a few moments. So when they get married, they have to kiss because the person who marries them is like, oh, let me get a picture. And there's some sparks flying. There's a couple moments where they're just kind of hanging out, that electricity, those sparks are flying, and so they kiss a few times, but Jude is always one to pull back and be like, this is wrong, you know, I don't want you to feel like you're living in my house. I don't want you to feel obligated, like this is very wrong. And I think that's correct. But also, on the flip side of things, I feel like their relationship is very hot, cold, on, off. Jude lets himself be taken in with Skylar and forget his initial hesitation about their age. Because he's very hesitant. He's like, I'm too old for you. You're way too young. You have your whole life ahead of you. Like, you want to get up and leave. Her whole plan is to save enough money to buy an RV and to just leave. She doesn't even know what she wants to do with her life. She just says, I want to do something where I can like travel and work. She has no idea what she wants to do. Again, another mark of like her immaturity. I'm not saying you have to know what you want to do when you're young, but it's just like, it's not fitting. It's not fitting. She just kind of like, she's never had this freedom. She's been in survival mode. And I don't think that that's the right place to be in a relationship, this survival mode, because their relationship kind of happens pretty fast, or at least it feels that way. The pacing in this book is very weird. We get lots of background information, and we finally hit the halfway mark where like some actual sexual chemistry is starting to happen, but I feel like it doesn't develop enough because it starts doing the hot and cold thing. Jude kind of gives in and they hook up. Weird scene because she gets her wisdom teeth out. So she's kind of high off meds and they're making out in the bed. Her cheeks are like puffy. Like, I had my wisdom teeth out. I don't want to kiss anybody after my wisdom teeth, and they're like making out. It was just a weird time to be intimate. So it was very strange. And also, she's on drugs. I'm not saying that he took advantage of her, but it was a weird moment to like explore their intimacy. It just felt very weird. I wasn't feeling it. I was not feeling the scene. Then later when they have sex, and this kind of bothered me. So like I said, Jude's always like, you're too young, you're too young. He even complained on their wedding day, like, you can't wear pink Converse. Like, you look like a kid. You have to go put on heels. And so like, in his mind, Converse is young, heels are older. Then they're in the hallway, they're making out, they kind of want to sleep together. And Jude's like, well, are you a virgin? And she's like, no, is that a problem? He's like, no, I want a woman, not a little girl. And I'm like, so losing your virginity automatically makes you a woman? Like, how? No. Very young children, you lose their virginity, that does not automatically make them mature. And I also don't like when authors focus on like virginity being like this big thing that needs to be made a big deal out. Like, oh, I can't take your virginity. It's going to like be such a different relationship since I'm the one that took your virginity. People put so much emphasis on like losing virginity, and I don't love that. I really don't. Like, I don't like heroes who are turned off because the heroine's a virgin. They're like, oh no, I can't sleep with a virgin. I'm like, anyway. So what I'm saying is, I didn't believe their chemistry. I hated the way that Jude continued to backtrack at every moment that they were progressing in their relationship. He kept falling back on the age thing. And for me, as a person who loves reading age gap romances, it's a trope that I enjoy to read. It does not turn me off at all in the least. I like age gap romances, mostly because I've always been attracted to older people my whole entire life. So it's a me thing. But in age gap romances, I need my characters to get on board and move past the age thing, because you can never change an age gap. It's always going to be the same. As the characters age, the gap is less noticeable, because, you know, from the further you are away from teenager years, the better it is. But the thing is, if the author's not going to do a time jump, then why are we harping on this? Why are we harping on the age thing? Get over it. It's an age gap romance. I need you to get over it. I need that to not be the conflict. It can be part of the conflict, but it's literally like the main point of it, being like, I'm too old for you. You're always going to be older than her. And so how am I supposed to believe in the end that suddenly you're just okay with it, where the whole book you were just like, oh, this is my reason why we can't be together, is because I'm too old for you. She's like a couple months older by the time they have their HEA. Like, not a lot of time's passed. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm explaining this right, but if my hero feels icked out because he's so much older than the heroine, then that's gonna make me feel icked out, you know? It's gonna make me feel like, oh, you're right, she does feel young. I don't know if this is such a good idea, you know? So that's how I felt. Jude was pointing out very good points as to why their relationship shouldn't progress. He was in a position of power over her, and I can overlook all of this in age gap romances if it's done right. I can be like, yeah, but they're meant to be together. In this one, I didn't feel like they were meant to be together, so I'm more hyper-focused on like, well, this is the first time that she truly felt safe, and she's in his house and she's feeling some attraction to him. He doesn't want to take advantage. He's trying to do the right thing and be like, you really need to explore life. You don't even know what you want to do. she really had like no hobbies or interests. She kind of had like a thing where she took pictures for the boutique that she worked at. I wish that relationship with the owner, the boutique owner, was explored a little bit more. She was like a mother figure, and I wanted her to be like a more prominent presence in her life. So yeah, I felt like she wanted to be set free so bad. She wanted to not be tied down to this town, this place where she's experienced heartache. People were completely mean to her when they find out about this marriage of convenience. Well, they don't know it's marriage of convenience. They're just like, oh my God, you married a 32-year-old. Like, you're gross. This is horrible. And she gets bullied even more. It's just horrible. It's horrible. Okay, I'm getting rambly. I just had hopes. And so you notice that I talk a lot about Skylar and how she feels young and stuff. And like, Jude's just this nice guy trying to do a good deed, trying to be nice. And he's also attracted to her, but he's fighting his attraction really hard. His only other conflict was his sister. And I felt like that whole scene, because she does end up by showing up, was very random. It's like after 10 years, he's never heard of her, but suddenly she pops up. And all she does, she pops up for the sole reason of asking him for money so he can send her away so that she can come back at night or during the day while Skylar and Jude were both at work and she had to go back to the house. And Skylar catches the sister robbing the place. Skylar tries to stop the sister, and the sister like bludgeons her with a hammer over the head. And so now Jude's like, oh my God, I'm a dangerous person to be associated with. We should definitely not be together. And I'm like, oh, really? And the sister just disappears after that. She literally came in to just knock Skylar on the head and for Jude to have one more reason why they shouldn't be together. And I was just like, that was just random. Felt very random, underexplored. So yeah, it's safe to say that I didn't really enjoy this romance. The writing was still like, I don't know, Kerrigan has a way with words, and there were still some lines that really hit me. And she's so creative in the characters that she chooses to tell stories and to give a romance. I find the concept of Skylar as a person awesome. Like, yeah, I want to read more books about heroines that have like very dramatically different experiences than a lot of heroines that I've read about. But that's not enough for me to love it as a romance. So I want to give this book a 3-star, and I hate that. I hate giving authors that I love low ratings, but I also don't want to rate a book high just because I like the author. I love the author. I'm still gonna read Kerrigan. I'm still gonna be excited about her next release, but yeah, I'm not gonna sugarcoat what I don't like about the book. So anyway, that's how I felt. I was trying to wrap my head around it. That's why it took me so long to like vlog my thoughts. Now that that's done, I actually last night was our live show of Love Lettering by Kate Claiborne, and so I have the arc of Love at First, and I started that one last night. I haven't got too far into it, but I'm really in love with these characters. I'm really in love with the story so far. It feels very different from Love Lettering. Like, I feel invested in the story from the very first chapter, whereas Love Lettering, it took me a little while to get into the story. Not so for this one. It's very interesting. So I'm gonna read just a little bit more, and then I'll come back and chat with you guys about what's going on, because I need to like have a firmer grasp on the story. But I'm already in love with Will, who is our hero, and the first time that he meets the heroine, Eleanor, I believe her name is from the blurb, or Nora. But anyway, I'll update you guys on that. Okay, so I'm about halfway through Love at First, and I'm really loving this story. This is just like a sweet romance, and I felt that way for Love Lettering as well. It's not like a rom-com, it's just something like super sweet and touching with like really endearing characters, really endearing side characters, and I just love this whole setup. So let me tell you about our characters. We have Will, and Will, there was a scene with his mom at the very beginning where he's 15 years old and he's worrying about things that 15-year-olds worry about. He's worried about baseball and girls. He's flirting with this girl in class, and he thinks of himself as somebody who's just kind of like enjoying life, and he basically has no like care in the world. He does mention that he knows he probably needs glasses, but since he plays baseball, he doesn't want to wear glasses like some other kids do, and he's just like, no, I don't want to be that kid. So he's like convinced himself that he doesn't need them. It'll come into play later. So his mom takes him on a trip and says, don't tell your father. They arrive at this building, and his mom's like, this is your uncle. I'm gonna go inside and go talk to him real quick, and you just stay outside. The uncle is like not receptive to their visit at all. And oh God, Will, I love him. So he's just like, okay, an uncle I never knew I had. This is his mom's brother. And he's outside and he hears this voice say, hey. And since he is going blind and he needs glasses, he can't see this girl very clearly. She's standing up on a balcony outside of one of the apartments. And at first he's like, oh my God, she's talking to me. But then he squints and sees that she's actually talking to this squirrel. The squirrel was like trying to mess up her grandmother's plans, and so she like took some tomatoes, like little cherry tomatoes or whatever, and was like throwing them at the squirrel to get him away. And one of the cherry tomatoes hits Will in the head. And so he's like thinking in his head, how I'm gonna be so smooth. I'm gonna pick up this tomato, I'm gonna be like, did you drop something? And he's like ready to flirt with this girl because her voice has such an effect on him. It was like love at first sound. But he's 15, so he doesn't think of it that way. He just is like, wow, who is this girl? I have to know her. But then he overhears something that his mom says and that his uncle says. And all of a sudden, the girl doesn't matter. And his world pretty much comes crashing down, and we don't know exactly what's said. That's kept a secret, but we do know that it like changes Will's mentality. They go home and he and his mother never talk about it again. And he quits the baseball team, he goes to get glasses, he like hunkers down and he studies, and that's all we know. 16 years later, Will is now an ER doctor. And there's this fun little side kind of bromance happening with his superior. So the attending emergency room doctor, he is like this very stiff, very like he's on your butt if you're not like doing stuff correctly, and he's very like proper and stuff like that. And Will thinks talking to him is like pulling teeth, and it's not like very stimulating conversation. Sorry, my battery died. That's happening a lot to me lately. I really need to check my battery. Anyway, so there's kind of like a bromance between this guy, because all of a sudden his superior wants to like talk to him kind of about like personal stuff, but he's very awkward about it. And Will just like, is he trying to like tell me stuff? And he always mentions like his ex-wife, and Will tells him like, oh, I inherited this apartment building. It used to belong to my uncle and I don't really want it. It's pretty run down. The building is pretty like, it hasn't been updated in forever, and I don't need this apartment, so I don't know what to do. And his superior, oh my God, what's the guy's name? His nickname's like Jerry or something. I think his first name's Gerald. Hold on one second, because it's gonna bother me if I don't know. I think his name's Gerald. Okay, it's Dr. Abraham, Gerald Abraham. So Jerry keeps on, well, Dr. Abraham keeps on bringing up his ex-wife and how she's a real estate agent, and she's done that to a couple of apartments. She's bought them and kind of like redone them and rented them out. So he is like, you should talk to her. I'll give her your number and you'll go from there. So when Will goes to the apartment, then we go to the point of view of Nora. And Nora has just returned to this apartment, and this was her grandmother's apartment that she has inherited after her grandmother has died. She died about a year ago. And then Donnie is Will's uncle, and she knew Donnie pretty well because she spent the summers at this apartment with her grandmother. We don't know why. This is part of like her conflict. They're all wondering who's getting the apartment, because every single person in that building has owned their apartment for like ever, and it's like this little community. They have like all kinds of stuff that they love to do, and it's basically like Nora's family. All of the people at this apartment are like her family, and they're all like old. It's so funny. So of course they're kind of like, oh, who's gonna move in next door? And Nora gets up at like 4 a.m. She calls it her golden hour. She's just like sits in silence, and well, she hears this throat clearing on the balcony next door, and that's Donnie's old apartment, and she sees Will. And they get to talking, they have a connection, but he gets paged, and so he has to go to the hospital, and she doesn't find out what exactly is going on with Will at the time, and because Will does ask her like, how do you like living here? Will's assuming that she doesn't like living here and that it's so like outdated. Like, what is there to like about this decrepit building? And Nora is like, yes, I love it. Like thinking in her head, she didn't have the chance to tell him how amazing this apartment is and how amazing the people are. So they get their wires crossed. And when Nora, who's like the president of, not the homeowners association, whatever, the building, She gets a note from Will saying that he is redoing the apartment and that he's going to sublet it out. And she is pissed off because they're like, we don't want like strangers to be coming in and out of here. We've known everybody for forever. This is like the type of tight-knit community that we want to have. And they're outraged. And so now it's kind of like an enemies to lovers because Nora is so annoyed with Will not like being charmed by this building, and she is intent on sabotaging him trying to renovate this apartment and subletting it out to some strangers. And over the course of her sabotage, how she tries to sabotage him, they really get to know each other, and I love the gradualness of their relationship is a little bit of a slow burn, and she gets to learn a lot about Will and what drives him and his relationship with Donnie, which is fascinating. So I'm getting into like major spoiler territory, so if you don't want to know. She always thought of Donnie as this really nice guy, and he was always able to help like people in the building, and he also like left out food for stray cats and stuff. And when she finds out that this apartment is basically like an albatross around Will's neck, that he does not want it at all because it's the worst memory of his life, was the day that his mom went to Donnie, her brother, and asked Donnie to take in Will, like for good, because her husband was dying and she just didn't have time to deal with her son. And so we learned from Will that his parents had a very intense relationship. They were all about each other, really. And it's like all of their love went to each other and they didn't really have time for Will. And so his mother, all she was worried about was her husband and losing her husband and what that meant for her. And Will was just kind of like this burden for her. She didn't want to worry about taking care of a kid whenever she wanted to be with her husband every second of the day. And so she asked her brother to take in Will. And the brother, Donnie, and his mother didn't have a good relationship because Donnie considered Will's mother as being very selfish and self-centered and rash, and just like, he didn't like when Will's parents were dating in high school and stuff, just the way that they acted. He didn't like it, and so anyway, they were not on good terms. And so he basically tells her no, that he doesn't want Will because Will is probably just like her and he does not want Will. So this is what Will overhears when he is 15 years old. It's a lot to hear. That your mom doesn't want you, that she was completely ready to drop you off with this uncle that you have never met before, like packed his suitcase and everything, was ready to get rid of him. And so he was just like, okay, I'm gonna keep my head down. And like a year after his father died, I think he had pancreatic cancer, she died from an aneurysm. So Will was alone from 18. At age 18, he was an orphan, and he did everything he could to be self-sufficient. And of course, sorry, I just got a delivery for Pharaoh Feb. Well, I'll show you guys. So I have a touch of darkness and a touch of ruin. Yeah, touch of ruin. I'm excited for Pharaoh Feb. Anyway, so Will has kind of closed himself off to love because he doesn't ever want to be that obsessed with a person that they care about nobody else. And he starts developing feelings for Nora, and it scares him because he is just so turned off by the way that his parents acted towards him that he is afraid of falling for Nora in the same way. And Nora doesn't want to fall for Will because he represents change, and Nora has a very difficult time with change because she too did not have a great home life with her parents. They were anthropologists, archaeologists, one of those. They're completely different things, but I can't remember. They didn't really have time for a kid either. They were doing their own thing, their own research, they were professors and all that. So during the summer when they went on digs, they sent Nora to her grandmother, and her grandmother represented stability, and the people in the apartment represents her family. And so she doesn't want anything to change. And so every little thing that changes in the apartment, she feels like she's losing a little bit of that stability. And during the course of the novel, she has to learn that some change is good. And even some of the people that live in the apartment tell her, Like, you're living in a shrine to somebody else. Like, you're living in somebody else's home. You didn't even try to make it your own. You're living in like a tomb. You're living someone else's life. Like, you need to move on. This is not healthy. And so that's something that she has to learn, that, oh, it's actually nice. And it's so amazing when she first asked Will, like, hey, I kind of want like a towel rack in my bathroom. So you think you can put that in for me? I like how you had it in your apartment. And this is like a small change, but it's a huge step for her. And so little things like that. And also he's coming in late at night under the guise of helping her fix things, but they're really sleeping together. And it's really funny because the neighbors all know, and she's like scandalized when they're all like, we know what y'all are doing. I just really love this book, like, so much. It was just beautiful. It touched me. And yeah, there's even a grand gesture scene at the end. And if you know me, I don't really care for like over the top grand gesture scenes, but I feel like the same thing happened in Love Lettering. It was a grand gesture scene, but I feel like Kate Clayborn knows how to do them because it fits with the narrative. It doesn't feel cheesy. It feels just really sweet and lovely. And I'm just like, oh, I love this book. 5 stars. Love it. I also am really trying to like read fast because I want to read quite a few books for this reading vlog. And I'm just like, I know that something's gonna come up. I already started Actor A.G. Brown and I love it. Eve is so different from her sisters. Chloe had her life together. She was sassy, she was snarky. I loved her. Dani had like a touch of like the dramatics, and she was just like the cool girl. She practiced, Dani was a witch. And she learned all the practices from her grandmother. And I forgot exactly what that one was called, but she was just like so focused on studies, and she just was like, didn't have time for relationships, but she kind of fell into it in this fake relationship with Zafir. And Zafir is just like, Zaf, my sweet baby angel. He's so good. Oh my God, a book boyfriend for life. But Eve does not have her life figured out. She is just kind of like flitting from job to job. She has ideas to start up certain companies, and she always quits. And this actually reminds me of a Serena Bowen book. What's it called? Good Boy. Good Boy. And the heroine of that one, Jess, had the same problem. She like just didn't know what she wanted to do, and she would start this company and her parents would be like, oh my goodness, we're so proud, you finally found what you wanted to do. And then she'd be like, actually, I'm quitting. Same thing with Eve. Eve like wanted to be a wedding planner, and actually I think Jess, the last job that she had was wedding planning too in that book, in Good Boy. And Eve was just like, it's not working out. And yet there was a very dramatic thing that happened in the last wedding that she planned. I was cracking up. Talia Hibbert just knows how to make me laugh, like out loud. She's a true rom-com writer for me. Like, she just has that type of humor that works with me. And I think that's important when you're reading a rom-com. It has to actually be funny, and Talia Hibbert's brand of humor is my brand of humor. So now her parents are like, okay, you don't have access to the trust fund anymore. We're gonna cut you off. You need to find out what you want to do, and you're also not gonna be able to live here. And so she is kind of like leaves her house in a huff, and she's still kind of like in her pajamas, or her pajama shirt and stuff like that, and she just goes driving, and she knows that she needs to get her life together, but she is just kind of like at a loss, and she stumbles across this bed and breakfast in this like little town that's kind of like idyllic, like British countryside, and she hadn't even realized how far she drove, and she sees a job opening for the chef position at the bed and breakfast, and she goes, well, you know, that was one of the things that I did. I took some culinary classes, but she never finished culinary school. And she's like, I could do this. Like, oh, look, Dani would say that this is a sign. The hero, Jacob, he is on the autism spectrum, and he has no patience for people that he thinks are going to be incompetent and not run his kitchen like he wants it to be run. And he's very like exacting when it comes to his employees. And in waltzes in Eve, and Eve is just like, I love how he gets like really caught up with her boobs, and he has this notepad where he marks points in the person's favor and points against them with like O's and X's. And he's admiring her confidence, how she just waltzes in. She like didn't make an appointment, but she like sits down and just being like, I'm here for the position. She's straightforward. So she gets like a mark in her favor. He gives her an extra mark in her favor because he's been staring at her boobs, and he was like, I'll give her one. But then he doesn't like the color orange. Her shirt's like too loud, and she has orange lipstick, and she has purple hair, and he was just like, seems unprofessional. And so this is their dynamic. Danny is just like wild and free, and Jacob is just like has a stick up his butt, and they're definitely enemies to lovers. Oh, and she ends up by running him over with her car because he and his friend are both like interviewing. His friend's helping him. He tells Jacob, like, you're not in a position to reject her. She was the best candidate that we interviewed, and she's going to my bar, so, like, you need to head over there and tell her that she has a job. They have, like, a big festival coming up, too, that Jacob really needs a chef because they got tapped to make a lot of the stuff. And so he's just, like, between a rock and a hard place. He has to hire Eve, even though this is not who he wants working in his kitchen. And so he goes to find her, and she ends up by backing into him. And he has to like go to the hospital. He has like a broken wrist. It's like crazy, and he has pain. And I love the scene because he's like high off of pain meds, and Eve has to stay with him that night because the friend has to go run his bar. And she's checking on him because she's like, I know that people who are concussed, you have to check on them every hour to make sure that they're okay. So he like thinks he's dreaming, and he's like, you, this woman, this lilac and orange female, this destroyer of fucking world. He's so dramatic in his head, and it's just cracking me up. I love it. So I can't wait to watch them fall in love. I'll definitely be updating you on how this book is working out for me. I think it's gonna be a slam dunk. I'm just like, yeah, it's Talia Hibbert. So I'm absolutely loving actor A.G. Brown. I just like, I don't know what magic Talia Hibbert weaves with these Brown sisters, but it's amazing. And the couplings, the pairings are just perfect for each other because Eve pushes Jacob, and Jacob really needs it, and I love it. And he's so freaking grumpy. I love a grumpy hero. I love grumpy and sunshine, and like Eve definitely has a sunshine personality, but I would more categorize this relationship as grumpy and chaos sunshine. Eve is very chaotic. I love her. So she's helping out at the bed and breakfast because since Jacob broke his wrist, she definitely needs to cook. And so since he was high the last time that I checked in, since he was high on pain meds, Eve had to cook breakfast the next morning, and she was like following his handbook. It was like an employee handbook, but it was like how not to get me like fined with the food and board help, whatever. It was clever and it was funny, and obviously I am not. So I'll leave that up to Talia Hibbert, and you could just read this and know what I'm talking about. Eve is very stressed out because one thing to know about Eve is she's sort of a perfectionist, but in a way that she just really fears failure. And that's why none of her previous businesses have worked out, because she's so afraid that she's not doing things right. So it's easier to say like, oh, I chose to just move on and do something else, than saying like, I tried doing something that I really loved and I failed. Earlier in the book, she talked about how she actually really loved making tiny violins. I freaking love it. But her mom had suggested her going back to do that, but she was like, oh no, try it something I love, like, and then be doomed to failure. I don't think so. So this is a big problem for Eve, is sticking with something long enough to realize that even if you fail, that doesn't mean you're a failure, you know? So of course Jacob has to walk in while she's serving the guest breakfast, and at first he's like, oh my god, this wrecking ball is here and like gonna destroy my business. I thought that was a dream that she stayed here. And Eve really does pass this with like flying colors. She does completely fine, and Jacob has to admit that, okay, fine, you can work here. I'm about at the halfway point, and there's this really amazing scene. I do want to put up spoilers just in case, because I'm halfway in the book and I don't want to give you guys details this far in. So Eve has to help him a lot around the bed and breakfast, not just in the kitchen, but like they're making a bed. And he's kind of being like a lot nicer to her than she's used to. And Eve is attracted to Jacob, and so is he. And it's like this subtle attraction, like these subtle things that they notice about each other, but they're quick to like remind themselves like, oh my god, no, like that's my boss, like I can't do anything, or like, oh my god, no, that's my employee and she's a wreck, like I cannot notice how, you know, luscious she is. He's always talking about her skin glistening and glowing and stuff, and I just love it. It's just like very, the way that Talia Hibbert has her characters think about each other, it's just very like stimulating in a sensory way. Like, I don't know, she's just perfection. I just love it. But Eve realizes that Jacob's personality is a lot like Chloe's, and that he's very grumpy and he doesn't know how to really make friends because he spends all this time being so grumpy to somebody that when he realizes that he actually likes them, he doesn't know how to like go about being like, hey, maybe we could be friends. And so she was like, I'm gonna do something to show him that yes, we can be friends, and this is like a friend date. So she's in the room, in his like spare workout room, and she moves all the furniture around. There's this futon sofa bed that she puts under a window, and she opens up the curtain so like it's a nice sunset. And she noticed when she was taking care of Jacob that he likes to build a nest around him because it feels cozy and safe to him. And so she took a bunch of pillows out of storage to like build a nest so like he would be comfortable. And she like brought snacks, and she's always like listening to music and singing in the kitchen while she cooks, and Jacob really likes that. And so she's like, we can listen to music and stuff. And then she's like, oh no, I'm looking, and like I turned down the lights, and maybe this seems like a cheap date. And he is just so impressed with it. He's like, no, this is so perfect, like only you, Eve. But then it turns really hot really fast. Jacob accidentally finds Chloe's huge ass dildo tucked into the cushions of this couch, and he brings it out, and it is the funniest moment that turns so freaking spicy. Like, when I say spicy, I was like, whew, sweating up in here. The sexual chemistry is off the charts, and let me tell you, yes, Talia Hibbert can write a good sex scene. It is amazing. It just like the chemistry between these two characters is just so undeniable, and I just love it. I love it. I'm loving this book. What more can she do in this book to make me love it? Hopefully I'm gonna finish this within a couple hours, and I'll update you guys on my final verdict because it's just so good. You guys, I finished Actor A.G. Brown, and I'm trying to, I mean, like, this isn't important or anything because I can love them all equally, but I'm trying to see if I would rank it above or below Take a Hint, Dani Brown. I don't know. I don't know which one I like better. They're like tied, kind of. I don't know. They're just so good. Maybe Dani slightly higher, but oh my god, Eve and Jacob are just so freaking cute. And one of the things that I really love that Talia Hibbert does is when her two characters are starting to like catch feelings for each other, I love how like fluffy they feel inside. They're like so unsure about this new and shiny feeling that they're feeling for this other person, and I love the conversations that they have with like their friends and family about it. So I'm gonna go into a couple of spoilers, but before I do that, I just wanted to let you know that it's very hot, because the last time I talked about like the sex scenes was in the spoiler section previously, and those were freaking hot. And yeah. So both Jacob and Eve are falling for each other very fast. I love when Jacob calls Mont to like tell him basically that he slept with Eve, and Mont's like, does she know? Does she know that you don't just sleep with anybody, that you sleep with people you're in love with? Like, wow, this is huge. I can't believe that you fell in love with Eve, but I'm not surprised. I kind of hoped that this would happen. And then Eve is already feeling these feelings as well, but for her it's a little bit more difficult because Jacob's pretty accepting of his feelings, but he doesn't want to scare Eve off. Not Dani. Eve doesn't want to scare Eve off. And Eve texts her sisters. I love how she initiates this text. She's like, okay, hey, I like don't need any commentary, like don't ask me any questions or anything, but I just want to let you know. How do you know that you're in love? Like, what is it that you feel when you know you're in love? Because she is convinced. She's like, it's too soon. This can't be love, can it? It can, Eve. It can. So this kind of sets off like a whole chain of events because Chloe's a little bit worried. Eve's been dodging all of her family's calls, well, particularly her mom and her dad, because she just texted him and be like, look, I found a job and it provides housing, so just don't worry about me. And of course her parents are going to worry. Like, she literally just left the morning that they announced that she was no longer going to be able to draw from her trust until she could find a job and hold it down for a year. And now she just refuses to talk to them. So when Chloe and Dani hear that Eve is apparently falling in love with somebody, and also she talks to her grandmother about it as well, and her grandmother's girlfriend Shivani, And so they kind of join forces. Chloe was very worried about it because Chloe's more like Jacob in personality. So of course she's going to be like the worry wart, the like we need to go investigate, make sure that like she's actually doing okay. And so like the worst possible thing happens. Her parents get there and they're absolutely unimpressed by Jacob. They're kind of a little bit mean and it all falls apart from there. And I felt so bad. Like my heart broke for Jacob and there was like the conflict scene. I felt so bad. And he did react badly, but I love how like almost immediately Talia Hibbert's characters realize that maybe I shouldn't have done that. Like maybe that was too much. That was too much. I reacted very badly in the moment because everyone has those kind of reactionary moments that they regret. And as long as you recognize it and you're like, oh shit, I fucked up. I don't know what to do. Like how do I make it better? I feel better about the character instead of them like remaining stubborn that no, I did the right thing. I would have been hurt if I didn't let her go first and stuff like that. So it's just, yeah, Talia Hibbert, I love, love, love these books. They're super amazing. We get the little cameos from Red and also from Zephyr, and I just absolutely love it. I love these characters. I can't wait to see what other books that Talia Hibbert has in store for us. Yeah, I'll just read anything that she writes because these types of rom-coms are my favorites. Hers in particular. I can't even really name like a rom-com that I've read recently. And the contemporary that I've been gravitating towards has not been rom-coms at all. So she's the only one that I still like look forward to. When I do this, I go through like seasons of reading. I used to read a lot of like darker romances, not dark romances, but like heavier, angstier romances and historical and sci-fi and paranormal. And then all of a sudden I went through like a huge phase where all I really wanted to read was contemporary, as we saw from my stats from 2020. And now I want to like gravitate away from certain types of contemporary. So anyway, my whole point being Talia Hibbert still has my attention with these kinds of rom-coms and I love them. So 5 out of 5 stars for Eve Brown. So now I'm going to start The Heiress Hunt by Joanna Shoop. And this is the first book in her Fifth Avenue Rebels. And I'm really loving the premise of the story because it's like a childhood crush romance. And the hero, Harrison, has had a crush on his best friend, Maddie, for years. And his mom and his brother want him to marry an heiress because the business is in trouble. And the oldest son is already married, so it's up to Harrison to marry a rich heiress so that they can save their company. The only problem is Harrison does not have a good relationship with either of his remaining family. They were really horrible to him growing up, and his whole plan, he's been sneakily buying up shares on the down low. And he wants to surprise them by saying like, surprise, bitch, I'm owner of the company now. So this is all part of his plan. And when they ask him to marry an heiress, at first he's initially like, why would I ever do anything for you guys? You've never done anything for me. But then they mentioned Maddie's name. And Maddie was his best childhood friend. And I love how the mom like describes her as like the mannish one. And it's because she likes to play sports. She likes to play tennis. And her parents were pretty indulgent and they let her play tennis. And she has been out for a couple of seasons and she's still not married because she's making waves in the tennis world. She's like about to be entered into this tournament. But Harrison's like, okay, if I approach Maddie, I haven't seen her for 3 years, but if I approach her under the guise of like, hey, would you help an old friend find a wife? Like, you know everybody in town. Do you think you could do that? But like really he just wants to like spend time with her. And in this way, it's an excuse to just spend time with her like all the time, consult with her about these women that she's putting forward. And he does need to act kind of fast. I mean, he's not worried about it, but she's about to be engaged, like, and a proposal is expected very soon to like a duke or whatever, who obviously he needs the funds as well. So I'm really excited to see how this all plays out. They do plan on going to like the countryside, I think like the seaside. Forgot where it is. I hope some shenanigans start happening. So I'm really excited about this book. I have high hopes because I really do like Joanna Shoop's heroines a lot. And Maddie seems like a really cool girl. And I want to see how like Harrison starts putting the moves on her to show her, like, hey, we're no longer just friends. We've changed, and you're attractive, I'm attractive, so let's get together. All right, guys, I will update you later. So it's time for a final reading update. I had insomnia so bad. So I just woke up and I completely finished the Heiress hunt. I like barely started it last time I updated you guys, and then so I read that one all night. So this morning I was able to start The Devil in Her Bed, and I finished it, and it was lovely, and I really enjoyed it. It's so weird because I did not read the first and second books, so I'm like aware of some of the plots that happen, some of the things that happen, even though I do plan on going backwards and reading All Scott and Bothered next. I definitely want to read that one. But anyway, let's talk about the Heiress hunt, because I really like the concept. I really like this childhood crush, and I'm going to rope this person who doesn't have the same feelings with me, about me, into this hunt for a wife. But hopefully she'll get jealous enough that she's gonna want me. So Harrison's entire goal going to this house party, basically this weekend away, where Maddie has gathered up a lot of heiresses around the New York area, and they're all vying for Harrison's attention, and Harrison has no intention of marrying anybody but Maddie. Even though Maddie is kind of almost engaged to a duke, a member of the peerage, I didn't really love that part of the book. I didn't understand. Maddie seemed like such a headstrong girl. She wanted to play tennis so badly, and her father indulged her. But her mom's very adamant that Maddie marry up, because her mom came from a very, I don't think that they were poor, they were middle class, but they still struggled. And Maddie's mom tells her at one point, if you're with the Duke, you'll want for nothing. And I'm just like, how do you know that? I'm sure it was his father and his grandfather before him mismanaged the estate, but you have no guarantee that just because he's a duke, he's going to take the money from her dowry and like make a good life for her. All he has is his title. He doesn't have the money. That's why he needs to marry Maddie. So I just don't understand why her mother was so adamant that she married this duke. And I don't understand why Maddie was just like, well, I might as well, because I really do love this aspect. Harrison gets a lot of the girls on his side because everyone can tell that he and Maddie have this connection. Some of them even agreed to help him. And one of the girls tells Harrison that the only reason why she's engaged to this duke is because there had been whispers, because she had been out for 4 seasons. She was playing tennis. She was, doing her thing. But there were whispers like, oh, she's going to be on the shelf, and Maddie is competitive. And so she felt the need to like go hard after the duke because he was like the most eligible catch during the season. And she likes to come out as the winner. And so she, landed him. So she was the winner. And so she felt good about herself for landing this guy just because he was the top prize of the season. So she really doesn't have any feelings for him. She's starting to have feelings for Harrison. They have a couple moments where Harrison's just like, okay, I feel like I need to be more direct, and he almost kisses her, and she even asks like, seems strange, but were you just about to kiss me? And Harrison was like, yeah. And so they also play the game Sardines in a Can. Sardines is a game that we used to play whenever we were young, so I thought that was hilarious. And they have this moment where they almost kiss again because he immediately finds her, because he makes it to where Maddie goes hide so that he can have some alone time with her. But they get interrupted. They get interrupted quite a bit. And but then it's kind of dark, and even though there's other girls that find them, it's very dark. And so she has a moment where she's like grabbing his thigh, and he's like, oh my god, higher. And so that was like her taking the initiative, her actually showing that she wanted him. But they're caught in a compromising position. One of the mothers that came with her daughter, trying to get her to marry Harrison, sees them because Harrison wanted Maddie to go meet him at the gazebo in the middle of the night. It starts raining, and they get back, and he's basically like, you need to break it off with the Duke. Even though he proposed, like, why would you accept his proposal? And she accepted his proposal, the Duke's proposal, after her and Harrison had a couple moments. And she still had like no hesitation. She was like, well, I should want this, right? So I'm gonna say yes. And like, I didn't understand her thought process. I really didn't. I don't understand why she said yes to him. So anyway, The mom caught them together and called a meeting with Maddie's dad the next morning, and she kind of knew. And so she walks into the study, and there's her dad, the Duke, and Harrison. And the dad just like, look, you were caught in a compromising position. So now you're gonna have to marry Harrison. I already called, there's a special license, and you're gonna get married today. And I'm gonna have to pay off the Duke like half the sum I already promised him. And Maddie's reaction is like, Harrison, tell him it's not true. And I'm like, it is true. And he also told you that he's playing for keeps, that he wants you. Why would he lie? She was like so adamant on like clearing this up and staying with the Duke, and I don't understand why. She obviously has feelings for Harrison, but she's fighting against this like really hard. Like, how could you not speak up for me? I'm like, first of all, you're caught by somebody else with that isn't in your family, that will have no problem spreading the rumors around town that you were caught in a compromising position. Even if you do marry a Duke, that rumor's still going to spread. And then why would Harrison jump in to be like, oh yeah, you can still marry the Duke, when he just told you that he doesn't want you to marry him? I don't know. That moment kind of made me not like Maddie, because I'm like, I don't understand your thought process. And then of course they have some other conflicts, because she wants to get married. She tells Harrison like, you need to not keep any more secrets from me. You didn't tell me that you had feelings for me when we were younger. I wish you would have. You didn't contact me for 3 years when you went off to Paris, and you never wrote me any letters, and I felt like it was something wrong with me. And then now, come to find out, you're planning on ruining your family and doing a hostile takeover of their company and like keep me in the loop. So Harrison's brother pretty much threatens Maddie. Like, oh, it'd be so unfortunate if something happens to Maddie before her big tournament. And Harrison puts guards on Maddie without telling her of her brother's threats. There was a weird bouquet of like dying flowers, very insidious looking bouquet that got delivered to her, and he straight up lies to her in front of her face. And I'm like, I didn't like this conflict. I knew it. I'm like, oh, she's gonna catch him in a lie, and she's gonna be really mad because the one thing she asked of him was not to lie. And it was just like, they had already not had enough time really as a couple where Maddie was like, oh my God, I have feelings for him. And the whole reason why he left is because he overheard me saying like, I could never see him as anything other than a brother. And I basically broke his heart. So it's like, there's just one more thing that has to have like the third act breakup. And I think it was pretty unnecessary because it took them a while to get to this point anyway. And of course she reacts badly when she finds out, because there's an unrelated incident. They think it might be Harrison's brother, but it turns out it's not. This guy pinches her butt after her tournament, after one of her games, her matches. I'm not well versed in tennis. Anyway, and she handles him with like a hat pin, one of those big ass needles, and she handles him, but then the guard tackles him and like takes her to safety, and she's like, who are you? She's about to stab him with the pin too, and then she realizes they're bodyguards. Now Harrison has to come clean and be like, yeah, my brother threatened you, and I didn't want you to worry because like you had enough on your plate. You just needed to focus on the tournament. And she goes so far as to say, I think we need to separate. And like, I agree, no lying, but I saw it coming from a mile away, and her reaction was a little bit too much because they'd been married for like 3 days, and she was like, okay, now it's time to separate. And I'm just like, ugh. Anyway, it just aggravated me. I never really love the way that Joanna Shoop wraps up her books. I never really liked the third act conflict. It's just, yeah. So I'm gonna give this book, I don't know if it's a 4 stars. I would say 3.75 stars. Getting very specific. So yeah, I would say 3.75 stars. I'm gonna round up to 4 stars on Goodreads. Enjoyable, but definitely not one of my favorite books that she's written. So that brings me to The Devil in Her Bed by Kerrigan Byrne. And so the two things that I think about when I think of Kerrigan Byrne are angst, which is one of the reasons why I was hesitant to pick up the series, because a lot of her characters have really tragic backstories, and sometimes it could be like too much for me to handle. Like, I love The Hunter by Kerrigan Byrne, but those first few chapters, like, oh my God, they break my heart. And I'm like, I can't read this all the time, Kerrigan Byrne. But anyway, so I think of angst, and I also think of secret identities, and that is very prominent in this book, and I loved it. So Francesca, which, I mean, since I didn't read the whole series, I didn't have like the prior knowledge of her background. I don't know how much was revealed in previous books, but the very first chapter goes back to when Francesca, who is really Pippa, is a child. And she was the daughter of the cook and the butler. And they were older, and her parents like really tried to have kids for a long time, and they weren't able to conceive, and they consulted this Romney woman who gave them a mixture to drink, and they were pregnant with Pippa. And Pippa's friends with Francesca and Ferdinand, and also there's an orphan boy that lives there as well named Declan Chandler. And there's a very tragic scene where like the whole family, everybody is slaughtered, and Declan helps Pippa escape, but the Romney woman finds her in the forest and says like she saw that Declan was shot in the back and that he's dead, and that, you know what, maybe the best thing for you to do is to assume the identity of Francesca, because it would be the heir to this estate, the heir to the title. So she has lived her life as Francesca since she was like 5. And Francesca is so badass. She is like super spy. I freaking love her. So she's after the people who were behind the murder of her family and of Francesca's family. And she's getting really close, and I know that all of this, the red circle thing, has ties from book 1 and book 2. But this is the first that I heard of it, and it was very easy to follow along with the plot. It was very easy to read this as a standalone is what I'm saying. So then we're introduced to the hero. He's the devil of Dorset, and he's like a master of disguise. He is so good at becoming other people. He's such a chameleon. And I'm just like, is this Chandler? Is this Chandler? And it is. Slight spoiler, the devil of Dorset, the master of disguise, is Chandler Declan. Chandler Declan? I can't remember. It's like 2 first names, and I can't remember which, but I call him Chandler. But anyway, so he did not die. And so he knows, he is looking at this girl who's claiming to be Francesca, and he does not believe it one bit, because Francesca was like this delicate, very, I don't want to say weak, but fragile girl. And this Francesca that he's confronted with, that has this reputation of being this seductress, this spinster who has no qualms with like sleeping with men and taking a bunch of lovers. And he is just like, Francesca wouldn't do that. Francesca doesn't, like, no, this is an imposter. I'm going to uncover who she really is and what she's doing, why she feels like she has the right to assume Francesca's name. So this is the plot of the book. They are unaware of each other's identities, that they both survived the, Montclair massacre. She is so close to discovering the triad that rule over the like red circle people. And there's this scene where she has to break into this jail to interrogate the guy that they had captured. And she pole vaults between buildings, and she slips through the tiny window. And Chandler's there and he's just like, holy shit, this cunning person just like slipped through the window, and he has no idea. And then he finds out that this is a woman, and then he finds out, oh my god, Francesca, like who the fuck is this woman, this crazy woman? I love her. She's like one of those heroines that I'm like, I believe that she is this badass. She just seems like this like take no names. She takes charge of every situation, and I love her. And I love her thirst for vengeance. I really loved her character. So some more spoilers for like plot wise. They, of course, start to have this sexual attraction. And she finally kind of proves that she knew who Chandler was when they were little. She says something that he was just like, oh my god, you're really Francesca. And she wants to correct him, saying that she's Pippa, but before she's able to correct him saying, I'm actually Pippa, he says he can't lose her again, and if he loses her again, he'll die. And so now she's like, oh my god, so now I'm gonna have to tell him I'm Francesca, and he's gonna friggin' hate me. So she keeps that secret for a little while longer, and of course it comes back to bite her in the butt. I honestly wish, if I had a little critique, because I would rate this book 4.5 stars. If I had a little critique, I would say that I wish he found out earlier. Because when he finds out, he is so harsh towards her. Like, they had just declared their love, and then all of a sudden he was just like, you know what, I banged you and I'm done. And I don't even really care that you're alive. I wish that Francesca was alive. Stuff like that along those lines. And I was just like, we're going a little far, my dude. We're going a little far. I didn't understand what his obsession was with Francesca. Like, he apparently had this childhood obsession with Francesca. But when he thinks back on to the first time that he meets Pippa and Francesca, Francesca like recoiled away from him because he had been spending like days and days alone in the forest and he looked horrible. And Pippa was the one to like run up to him and grab his hand and like feed him and like take charge. And so I wasn't understanding why he liked Francesca so much. And like he saw Francesca as his redemption. He like just didn't care that Pippa survived. Only if Francesca would survive. And I was like, okay. But of course he comes to his senses and he's like, no, I love her. Can't live without her. And she's crazy and she's gonna, you know, get in trouble, and so I have to protect her. I also felt like it wrapped up a little fast, that part of it. Like catching the guy, the one who orchestrated the slaughter of the Montclair family, who turns out to be Chandler's father. And that's actually why the family was slaughtered, because they had housed Chandler, and it was kind of like a message to Chandler being like, you can't go anywhere and I'll find you. So now he feels responsible for all that, but I just feel like that whole aspect kind of like really wrapped up really fast. I wish it was just a tad bit longer, but I really loved it. Loved it. And I love seeing the side characters. I know that Jen really loves Ramsey. She kept telling me like, you need to read because Ramsey, the Scot, oh my God, I love him. So I'm definitely going to be reading that one. I'm actually really proud of myself for finishing this vlog. It is currently Sunday, so I'm really proud, and I'm going to get this vlog out as fast as I can. I feel like I rambled a lot for every single time I talked about a book, so I don't know how this editing process is going to go. But overall, I enjoyed the majority of the books that I read for this reading vlog, which is amazing. That does not always happen at all. It's rare. So now I'm going to get ready for Pharaoh Feb. It's also and there's also a Black author readathon, so I'm gonna like incorporate those books. I don't want to like make a TBR for that. I just kind of want to like mood read. I have a couple Beverly Jenkins that just came in the mail, so I'm probably gonna read those. And there was a lot of KU reads that were recommended, and yes, a lot of them were doing it for me. It was like sweatpants season, and that cover, I was like, yeah, gray sweatpants, yes. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you subscribe to get notified on any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys.